This massive ship, weighing hundreds of thousands of tons and standing as a floating skyscraper in the open ocean, what would happen if it suddenly decided to stop amidst the raging waves? The question arises, what prevents this behemoth from drifting away? Perhaps the first thing that comes to mind is the anchor, that massive piece of iron that digs into the seabed. It seems like a logical answer, doesn't it? But what if I told you that this answer is incorrect? Yes, you heard that right. The truth is that the anchor alone cannot secure even a small fraction of this weight. In this video, we will explore the remarkable engineering behind mooring giant ships and how a simple physical curve prevents hundreds of thousands of tons from drifting. But before we dive in, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Imagine you are piloting a massive object in the open sea and you simply want it to stop. The matter is not as easy as some might think. Here, you are in a constant battle against two invisible enemies, the wind and water currents, which push the ship relentlessly without pause. For a ship to remain steady in its position, it relies on two tools. The first is one we all know, the anchor. However, let me let you in on a secret that might change your perspective on the anchor. Its strength does not lie in its heavy weight as we imagine. Its true function is to act as a mere hook. Engineers designed modern anchors in a way that allows them to embed themselves into the seabed with great ingenuity. Once the anchor hits the bottom and is pulled horizontally, its fluke-like arms dig firmly into the ground. But for this trick to work, the seabed must be cooperative, on solid rock. For instance, the anchor will fail completely and slide as if it were skating on ice. Even algae can make the bottom too smooth for the anchor to find a place to bite. A sandy bottom is slightly better, but a muddy bottom remains the ideal location, where the anchor digs in like a claw and never lets go of the ground. Alright, are we finished? No, for everything we have said is worthless without the true and hidden hero of this process, the chain. On large ships, we are not talking about an ordinary chain, but rather hundreds of meters of incredibly heavy steel. Imagine that just one link of this chain weighs 160 kilograms, meaning it is heavier than a grand piano. As for the anchor itself, its weight reaches up to 23,000 kilograms, equivalent to the weight of about 15 cars. The strange thing is that despite the anchor's massive size, it exists only to hold the end of the chain in place, the real force that secures the ship is the total weight of both the anchor and the chain combined, a staggering weight that can exceed 243,000 kilograms. To help you visualize the magnitude of this figure, this weight is roughly equivalent to a full-grown blue whale tethered to the ship on the seabed. Now, we come to the real secret, or as I like to call it, engineering magic. It is not just about throwing a piece of iron into the water and waiting for the result. There is a very precise art that relies on a fascinating mathematical concept called the Catenary Curve. When the anchor reaches the bottom, the ship does not stop slackening the chain. Instead, it continues to do so. Why? Because the goal is not to create a tight straight line between the ship and the anchor, but rather to create a long, heavy belly of chain that lies flat on the seabed for long distances. This simple curve in the shape of the chain achieves two amazing things at the same time. First, this unbelievable weight of hundreds of meters of steel lying on the bottom generates immense friction with the ground. Imagine it as a giant paperweight preventing anything from moving. Second, and this is the truly genius part, this chain acts as a shock absorber. When a strong wave hits the ship or the wind pushes it, the force does not reach the anchor directly to wrench it from its place. Instead, the force goes first toward trying to lift this incredibly heavy chain from the bottom. Thus, the wave's energy is entirely exhausted in resisting the weight of the chain, which stretches and straightens gradually like a giant rubber band absorbing the shock. By the time the force finally reaches the anchor, it has weakened completely and turned into nothing more than a negligible, light tug. Without this clever curve, any strong wave would be enough to rip the anchor from its place immediately. In short, this curved line is the difference between a ship anchored safely and an aimless object tossed by the waves. We now arrive at the most important question. How does the ship depart? How do you pull up an anchor originally designed never to leave the ground? connected to a chain that weighs more than a blue whale. Frankly, it doesn't rely on brute pulling force, but rather on clever maneuvering. Here is how the process works. You don't just tug at the chain. You actually drive the ship. The captain begins moving the vessel very slowly toward the anchor's location, while a massive lifting machine called a windlass gathers the slackened chain. Here, the windlass isn't pulling the ship. It is merely lifting the vertical weight of the chain, while the engines handle the movement. Once the ship is directly above the anchor, the trick begins. The chain is pulled upward vertically. This force lifts the anchor's shank from behind, using it as a lever to release the flukes embedded in the bottom, and the anchor simply slips out of its hiding place. But how does the captain know when to stop? And how is the length of the chain in the water calculated? The solution isn't found in complex sensors, but in an ingenious and very simple analog system. The anchor chain is not a single piece. It consists of sections called shackles or shots, each about 27 meters long. To let sailors know how many shackles have been lowered into the water, the connecting links are painted with clever colors. The connecting link is always red, and the links adjacent to it are painted white. The rule is simple. The number of white links tells you the section number. If you see one white link on each side, you are at the first shackle. If you see two, you are at the second. Thus, with a quick glance at the chain as it emerges from the water, any crew member immediately knows how many meters of holding power remain in the depths. It is a simple system, yet it is what ensures these floating fortresses remain safely in place. This is the studied reality and the actual physics that keep these massive ships stationary. But then comes Hollywood. We have all seen that scene of a massive battleship suddenly dropping its anchor while traveling at high speed to perform a sharp turn, as if using a handbrake in a racing car. In reality, this is completely impossible. What would actually happen is one of two scenarios. Either the anchor fails to find a grip and continues to bounce along the seabed like a tin can tied behind a car without the ship feeling a thing. Or, in the worst-case scenario, if the anchor actually bites into solid rock, the chain would snap instantly under that immense force as if it were a thin thread. So, the next time you see a massive ship anchored peacefully in the harbor, remember that it isn't just parked there. It is actually engaged in a very delicate balancing act between physics and engineering. It is held in place not just by the weight of the anchor, but by that clever, fluid curve and by a massive force distributed brilliantly along hundreds of meters of steel. Now, did you know that it is the weight of the chain that secures the ship and not the weight of the anchor? And is there another engineering myth you would like me to dismantle for you in the next video? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We have reached the end of the video. Thank you for watching.